This show's really impressive, and we're going to talk about it, but sadly it didn't answer my biggest question. Is this the guy with the museum? Is it the same Ripley? What's up, Netflix fans? As always, we're talking the brand new show or movie on streaming. Today's is Ripley, starring Andrew Scott. It's an 8-episode black and white noir series. Let's talk about it.
May I ask you to describe Thomas Ripley?
So a grifter named Ripley living in New York during the 1960s is hired by a wealthy man to begin a complex life of deceit, fraud, and murder. This is rated TV mature. Then we'll start with the lead, Andrew Scott, who plays the talented Mr. Ripley. We've seen this story before. Whether it be the source material or the movie or the countless other ways this story and numerous other Ripley stories have been told, but Scott plays it in almost this maniacal yet sly and honestly at times captivating type of way, and he's just really good at portraying the duality of man and not only playing Mr. Ripley, but also the other guy, whom in the first few episodes, he is slowly kind of learning the ins and outs of how he operates, and those sequences where he just looks at himself in the mirror and becomes this other person. It's really fascinating. Gives me like American Psycho vibes, which I absolutely loved. And again, Scott is not only ridiculously believable, but he also captures the different personalities of these handful of characters he's portraying. He's awesome. Johnny Flynn plays Dickie Greenleaf. The back and forth between Tom and Dickie, their relationship, what they show us and then what they hint at with their relationship, but never fully commit to, and the fact that even after Dickie learns the truth of why Tom is there in the first place, he still maintains that relationship, and just the dynamic between those three was awesome. But talking about those three, Dakota Fanning gives a great performance here. Marge is not happy through various points of this series, and you can understand why. But there's also this insane and honestly warranted lack of trust between she and Tom that is very much so expanded upon after episode 3. See, episode 3 is when a lot of the big stuff that we're waiting on to happen actually happens, and the details that we get surrounding that entire sequence, that takes up that entire episode. Just the way it takes the story from the original, it has 8 episodes to, and I mean fully expand upon this story, but really the ins and outs of his quirky personality and how not everything goes according to plan, and when it doesn't, he has to rethink some things. The boat sequence where he finally embraces and becomes Dickie, you think it's going to go one way. It doesn't. It goes the exact opposite way. And I feel like some people are going to watch that and say, man, it's just taking so long. Instead of going from a murder to the next day almost immediately from scene to scene, we get the entire thing playing out. The ways it goes right, the ways it goes wrong, the moments in between, the moments where Tom Ripley is sitting and just kind of pondering on what just happened, whether he made the right decision or not, every movement. And this show, it holds nothing back. It commits to the bit. It spends its time on these characters and the character development, the conversations, the moments in between those conversations, allowing our characters to take a step back and breathe just a little bit. I mean, most of the focus, 90% of the focus is on Tom and Dickie, and both or neither.
I am so confused.
Now, obviously, we're spending the first few episodes building up to this murder. Once it happens, you're like, okay, we have a lot of time left. What are they going to do? But there are characters that come along, mostly the inspector, that causes Tom to have to make more of an effort to cover his tracks. And when he becomes Dickie at points throughout the series, he has to be very careful as to who he is talking to. This inspector character at the beginning, or at least when he's introduced, I was all in on this storyline, this cat and mouse chase of sorts, this mystery noir that is set in this time period. And the backdrop of Italy, which is through most of the show, is so beautiful. It allows the cinematography to stand out. It allows the shot selection to just become so much more prominent as we're going. And I thought visually, obviously sticking to the black and white through the entire show, it is a phenomenal top tier show to look at. Beautiful from start to finish. It's not a beautiful story. Well, I guess there's a little bit of beauty in this murder. How's that for a juxtaposition? At least the way that they're telling this story. There's something haunting, eerie, and beautiful about it. But the vibes of this dark and chilling noir, a time period that we don't often get on Netflix, a backdrop that we don't often get on Netflix, and a story that is just so chilling to the bone to where there's almost horror aspects at times. At the end of the day, it's just a lot of conversations between characters and a lot of lies at the beginning of this show from Tom Ripley. But the way that he handles it and the fact that he's just so smooth and suave about it until he actually commits to what he's doing, and that entire process, like I said, there was really nothing smooth about it. He thought he knew what he was doing, and then it turns out a lot of things went wrong, but we got to see every bit of it, and that made for a very realistic feeling sequence. But the idea of the duality of man, it's a little more literal this time around because he's actually playing two different men. And you saw this in the Matt Damon movie, the way that Matt Damon approached this character, which was a little different, but it's the same when you look at it in context. But the way that Andrew Scott handles it, and just the fact that there's way more time to flesh this out this time around, 8 episodes, every moment, every scene, every slow sequence, and I found this series to be very tedious at times and very slow and ominous in nature, and it made me feel a certain way, and at times I was even getting frustrated. I'm like, can we just move on? Because I know where we're headed. I understand. Actually, I didn't really understand why Dickie at times, even when he knows what Tom is actually doing there to start, like why he's there, the fact that his dad sent him, Dickie's just like, yeah, you can stay. And that relationship, how they keep certain things hidden from the audience, and the way that there's like this chemistry between the two and some things that I don't think they fully explored that were maybe happening in the background. I found that to be really fascinating. But a lot of it comes down to the performances and the fact that Scott just nailed it from start to finish. And then when we're more focused on the Dakota Fanning side of things, she is giving one of the better performances I've seen. I was so excited that she was cast in this, and she delivered in every way.
Hey, that's pretty good.
Yeah, and I use that word tedious. Some would see this and say, oh, it's exhausting. Just the way that that episode is handled, and the way that episode 6 is handled, and the way that certain sequences later on are handled, and the cat and mouse chase, and yes, but at the same time, it's so realistic in that way, and it captures this tone and this vibe that shows like this try to do, and maybe that's because the story behind this is so strong. That's probably why it's been tackled multiple times. Now, as it goes, as it moves, as we get more into the cat and mouse side of this and the detective work and how smart you think certain characters are when all of that starts, but by the end, you're just kind of like, okay, and when we get to the end, the final episode, there is one little twist or turn in there that I wasn't fully sold on. And on the other side of things, you have our detective that just allows things to go right by him. And I'm just like, why didn't you pay more attention?
You idiot.
I shouldn't be surprised that the screenplay is so intricate like it is. It's from the writer of Moneyball, Schindler's List, The Irishman, and countless other movies in that vein. So once again, a great screenplay. Before I give you my score for this show, let me know, does this type of atmospheric noir usually work for you? Is it something that you're going to binge this weekend, or are you going to do it in chunks like I did it, 2 episodes at a time? It worked. Ripley is a dark and chilling noir that adds plenty of sections in with its atmospheric style. Andrew Scott disappears into this role as our writer crafts a mesmerizing screenplay. It's one that I was sucked into, even with a couple of pacing things here and there. I'm curious to see, what do you all think of this 8-episode series? Would you like to see more of Ripley? Andrew Scott? I mean, this is maybe his best performance so far. Let me know what you're watching on Netflix this weekend. Thanks so much for watching, and plenty more reviews right here.